All right, welcome to the November 9th EAC meeting. Our first order of business was to approve the minutes, but we need a fourth member to join, and until that happens, we'll delay that and move on to the next item, which is the new long-range tree planting plan. So take it away, Tom.
Sure. Actually, I was going to ask Jim Majewski to first tee it up because Jim has some good news about, as we speak, tree installations. I'm sure now that it's dark, the landscape contractors have finished for the day. But Jim, could you bring everyone up to date about the tree plantings this week?
Yes, as you may recall, the Board of Supervisors awarded a contract for tree planting this fall in 2023. The contractor started work just the other day. Yesterday, they planted 9 trees over the Fred Allen Fields. Today, the delivery of trees was up at Memorial Park, and this afternoon, they planted somewhere around, I'm not even sure how many trees, maybe 40, 50 trees so far. They actually were working or finishing up working in the dark, putting some water on the trees, stuff like that. So they're well underway. They'll be working tomorrow and probably Saturday, and hopefully they'll be finished up by the beginning of next week. As you may recall, they're planting trees at Memorial Park, primarily on the east side, where they had built a pickleball course a few years ago, providing buffering, some trees along the walking trail, and also some trees in areas near the stream, sort of reestablish a little bit of a buffer near the stream. And also they're doing Fred Allen softball complex to plant trees to replace some of the ones that were taken down because they're either dead, diseased, dying, too close to the trail, obstructing sight distance. So I think there's somewhere up to like 50 trees going in that area. And there's also a number of trees being planted along the back of the large field at the Kiola Baseball Complex along Oxford Valley Road. So we got continuing that mix of evergreens that are out there and deciduous trees, added some more evergreens, some more deciduous trees, and to plant some trees to sort of buffer the area from for the neighbors who live in the area.
All right.
Hey, Jim, we had made some initial suggestions about the 162 trees, about locations and species. How close did, the actual plantings mimic what we did? And I know they didn't, in entirety, but are you also going to supply us, when they're finished with a schematic showing where these trees went in and the specific species that they used?
Yes. And the only major change from what you had in your plan was you had shown 50 or 60 trees all along the back field. That's the open area where the playground is. And we didn't plant any of those trees in there for a whole number of reasons. So we reallocated some of those trees to Memorial Park, to Kiola, or up to along the area along Roloff's Road. I think at the end of the day, you'll be quite pleased. And when actually you see it, you could see there's even room for more trees in the future. Hence Tom's work on the long-range tree planting plan.
So you think they'll finish by the end of next week with these?
Oh, yeah.
160? Okay, good.
Yeah, personally, I would like to keep Tom busy in our township for the next 20 or 30 years.
It sounds good. I would love that.
Well, I don't want to keep him that busy. I want the guy planting the trees to be busy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, sure. So, Jim, beside Fred Allen, Memorial Park, and Greg Kiola, what other park facilities will get the trees in the next week or two? Are there any others beside those three?
Those are the only 3 that were in this round of planting.
Okay.
And I know we kind of we did a little bit in reverse order. We let out the contract for planting trees before we let out the contract for figuring out where the trees go. although a lot of the trees were on the prior long-range tree planting plan. And based on the valuable input we got from Tom, we were able to place the trees in a bunch of good locations, I think, on those sites.
Very good.
All right, yeah,
Um,
sounds good.
So before I go, since Kevin joined us, do you want to go back to the minutes?
Oh, hi, Kevin. And Matt's there too, but Matt wasn't in our last meeting. Hey, Kevin, you live?
I'm here, yes.
We see your name. All right, let's have a vote on approving the October 12th meeting minutes.
I make a motion to approve the meeting minutes from what date are we talking about? October 12th.
Right. And I'll second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, done. I'll send them on to Katie.
Very good. And then I'll go next, but I wanted to ask the question because when Jim and I were talking earlier today, and I wondered if the EAC was going to have a December meeting. Is your next meeting December 6th? I'm sorry, 7th?
It's usually the second
It will be-
Thursday, so it'd be the 14th.
14th.
Okay. Okay, very good. Okay,
Yeah, late.
very good. So in terms of, I'm going to start with a high level. Jim and I spent 2 complete days driving around 37 sites, 12 of which have discernible familiar names, and 25 of which are basins that are identified by their street location. And so last Thursday, November 2nd, my colleague Aaron and I sent the 37 sheets to Jim, Dave Kratzer, and Dan McGlone for kind of review. And they looked them over during the week. And then yesterday, we revised 3 of the sheets. So the 12 sheets that we resubmitted yesterday to Jim Majewski included number 1, Memorial Park, number 2, Community Park, number 3, Greg Kiola Baseball Park, number 4, Fred Allen Softball Complex, number 5, Community Center, number 6, Reagan Tract, which is mostly a basin, number 7, Veterans Square Park, number 8, Makefield Park, number 9, Makefield Highlands Golf Course, number 10, Stoddard Fields, number 11, Patterson Farm, and an open space parcel known by its road location of Woodside Road and Upper Hilltop open space. So Jim is going to have the ability to share the screen. And just for fun, I wanted to start with sheet number 12 on the Woodside Road and Upper Hilltop open space so that you could appreciate the approach that we took when we visited each of the sites. So Jim, will you be able to bring up sheet 12? Very
Yes.
good. Okay, so ironically, this is open space right across from the golf course. And when Jim and I walked it, we scratched our heads and said, who's been maintaining this open space? Because the grass is being, well maintained. And we met several of the neighbors to find out that they cut the grass. And on the plan, up on the northern part, there are 3 sassafras that are shown. And in my whole career, all 50 years, I have never seen 5 mature sassafras like those along Woodside Road. And so to complement those, we just turned the corner down the property line and put in 3 additional sassafras, which, as you all know, has that beautiful yellowish, reddish fall color and has leaves that are like mittens. And then when we walked in the back, our eyes almost jumped out because we found a grove of catalpa trees. I've never seen 100 catalpa trees before in a grove setting, but we did find 2 gaps in the grove, and in those gaps, we thought we could fit another 10 catalpa trees. So the reason I wanted to start there is that when Jim and I visited each site, not only did we look for the gaps that would fill in gracefully where the other trees were not, but we also looked very carefully at the species to, in this case, just complement them. And I was slightly tempted to also recommend one other favorite tree, but it's not on the native plant list, the Dawn Redwood, because down at Longwood Gardens in the Catalpa Grove there, the Metasequoia complements the Catalpa in a very peculiar leaf texture way. But I didn't want to put in non-native, so I didn't. But otherwise, I thought, Jim, well, first of all, in each of these cases that we're going to go through, if anyone has any ideas, comments, suggestions, questions, be happy to entertain them. And then if anyone has any suggested alternatives, I'm going to mark up the plans that I have right in front of me and produce revisions. So before we go to another sheet, does anyone have any comments on this number 12 Woodside Road and Upper Hilltop open space?
Yeah, I have a question.
Sure.
I mean, you know best, but I was just wondering, is it what are your how does it play out in terms of ecological sense? If you have the same species, a large pocket of the same species versus a large pocket mixed with different compatible species, because if you have one particular thing getting a disease, it'll run through the whole patch.
Sure, good question. And I thought the same thing at first, but the trees have been here 50 years. Now, that wouldn't prevent next year the problem from occurring, but they're so majestic and they're so beautiful that I just thought, if we took people on like a little field trip of the green spaces in Lower Makefield, we would explain to them, how this planning plan evolved. But, I appreciate your comment. And, as we loop back to each of the sheets, if the EAC would prefer for me to come up with alternative species, I'd be happy to do that. It was just that I have never seen 2 stands of specimen trees like this in a suburban setting municipality in my whole career. Wow. So I was just thrilled to see what I saw.
Yeah, Tom, I would like to make a comment as well. Personally, I like what you did, and I understand where Sumi is coming from too, but your explanation, I think, is certainly sufficient that we won't have, hopefully, issues there. But I think in good design, well, firstly, catalpa and sassafras are 2 of my very favorite trees. So, but I think good design, when you look at the topography, it almost tells you what to plant there. And again, in this initial first slide, I think your direction is very positive.
Oh, good. Thank you.
How would you get back to the Catalpa Grove? Do you have to park up at Woodside and walk down?
Yeah, it's a great question. Jim, we had a park on the adjoining neighborhood on the north side of Woodside. What was that street we were on?
It's the Clearview development. I can't remember the street name.
Yeah. And there's access. You don't have to walk through somebody's backyard.
Well, they treat it like their backyard, but no, you can. This is all open space here. Here's the property line just on the side of, the property line's right here. comes all the way down. So you
Yeah.
could just park over here, walk across, walk all the way down here. The line's pretty well delineated there. People have fences, sheds, stuff like that.
Mhm.
And it's actually a beautiful piece of parkland that is maintained by the property owners. They even maintain some of the property next door. This is actually on the broadcasting tower's property. It's really just a lovely setting that these people have, and they maintain it all without the township having to expend funds to do it.
Yeah, I'll have to go look at it. I've never been back there.
Neither
Yeah,
had I.
it's really, the other thing is the neighbors are very friendly. Once they said, you know, can you tell us who you are? And Jim did. They were very proud to say that they maintained it. They have their 4th of July picnics in the backyard. Now, Jim did explain to some of the property owners that they're encroaching on the open space. They have their wood piles, and some of them have sheds, some of them have play apparatus. And Jim said, well, if it ages and has to be removed, please don't replace it. And they acknowledge that. So otherwise, Jim, let's start with number 1 and we'll just go 1 through 11. Okay, so admittedly, on Memorial Park, the concentration is on the east side. And as Jim mentioned earlier, at Memorial Park, there's 40 to 50 trees going in. When Jim and I went there, excuse me, we looked at sweet spots on the east side of pickleball, where we suggested, excuse me, I'm just getting over a cold, both evergreen and deciduous, and the plan shows a black gum, 3 eastern cedar, and 7 willow oak. And then along the frontage, there are 10 red maple that are in the same area that the EAC had highlighted in an idea plan. As we got closer to the stream, I thought that the swamp oak would be a complementary plant on the west side of the pickleball. And then the access drive to the parking, we have straddled with thornless honey locust. And then heading toward the memorial garden itself, in the crescent-shaped alignment of the drive, there are 9 sourwood. And then back in the crabapple grove, we just put a little infill of 8 eastern redbud there, as well as in the northeast corner. And admittedly, there's a lot more opportunity for reforestation in the northeast corner. But we knew we had to start somewhere, so we came up with this as put our toe in the water, for the first time. And in each site, we tried to find the preferred locations where the new trees would go. So, Jim, to your understanding, in the 40 to 50 trees going in this week, in these locations, they're pretty much going in the locations that we had envisioned out in the field, correct?
Yes. Some of the trees, we don't have the eastern redbuds ordered, so we kind of took those and relocated some of those down to the areas like along the stream. There's like an open area in here that we kind of filled in and stuff. And then at a future date, future planting, we'll plant these eastern redbuds up in here. But yeah, it pretty much looks like this. I think we looked at maybe adding a couple of extra trees in this area to sort of firm up the buffer a little bit.
Okay, good.
Yeah. But it's just like we had discussed when we walked it with the EAC and walked it with you. And then I know one other thing when we had walked and when we had walked with the EAC and when I discussed it prior with our Parks and Rec director, that whole area on the east side is just a big open field that now we cut grass. And I think everyone kind of acknowledges that maybe that's something we should convert from grass to something else. And when Tom and I talked, we talked about, do we plant that all as a meadow or a meadow and forest? And I think we're kind of waiting on a little direction from our Parks Department on what they would prefer to see out there before Tom adds that to the plan and brings before you. But I don't know what your thoughts are in this area on the east side, whether the EAC would prefer a lot more trees or if you prefer meadow or if you prefer a mix.
Well, let me just comment. The original plan under the 2016 plan was to add 30 trees. And I guess, are they the ones shown there, or some of the ones Tom is suggesting in the new plan showing up there as well? I mean, I think what we have to be able to do is differentiate, when we see these schematics as to what's proposed and what is, part of the old plan.
Yeah, and I think Tom looked at sort of refreshing that old plan with, and it's pretty similar. There's not a lot of dissimilarity between the two. This is just more an updated one with a little better thoughts and ideas behind it. But what are your thoughts on that big open field here? Would you ultimately like to see that a meadow or trees or a mixture?
I would vote meadow. I don't know, maybe a mix of trees and meadow, but there are a lot of trees in that area already. A nice wildflower meadow would look good.
Yeah, I tend to agree, with Alan, but if we could put some trees in there, because I'm a tree guy, but I think diversity is the key to a beautiful landscape.
Were there any thoughts about putting trees around the basketball courts? Because we had mentioned that in our October 5th letter with our recommendations. On the other side, the west side. Yeah, there.
Okay. That's not something I think Tom and I talked about, but I think that's a good idea.
Yeah, it's pretty open and kind of barren.
Yeah, you can get about, I would say, between 20 to 30 trees around that court. And I know the people who recreate there would appreciate it, to get some shade.
Very good. Yeah, we missed that one.
Yeah, and actually, one other thing that Monica Tierney, our parks director, brought to my attention, in the far northwest corner of the property, they call this the chimney of the Memorial Park. This area in here is kind of damp. So when our lawnmowers are cutting up in here, they rut up the place a little bit, and it's just sort of, they'd almost like to reclaim that as trees and or meadow. So, I know Tom and I talked about maybe leaving this open so you have areas where people can do recreation, but if it's a little bit soupy, I think some species there that are water tolerant might be a good idea, Tom. And Monica just mentioned that to me today.
Okay. Very good.
And
Sounds
Sonia,
good.
did you have an idea on a meadow or trees over there on that east side?
I don't have, I'm not looking at it from an aesthetic point of view, but I tend to go towards trees for long-term benefits. Meadows also have their place, but I thought the left side has enough of the flat area. So I don't say I have a very strong opinion, but left to me, I would do trees.
Yeah, I would echo that. I agree with Sumya. I would like to see trees up in that area.
So many trees.
Yeah.
How about Kevin?
Planting all our trees.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
think
the
it's more
left side,
difficult.
Sumia, is grass. It's turf grass. This would be meadow, good
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
bees
I
and
get
all
it.
that.
Yeah, a natural meadow. But what I'm saying is it's more difficult generally to find space for trees versus meadows. Meadows can be accommodated in smaller swaths of land, tracts. So if left to me, if I find space for a tree, I would put in trees. But that's just a personal preference.
So maybe
Um,
do a mix. How about a mix? Like,
Well, how
My-
about Kevin? Does he want to weigh in?
Yeah, my only comment there is related to the playground, just because I have a kid and it doesn't get much shade, and sometimes in the summer it gets very hot on the surfaces. So if we can find ways to provide more shade, I think that would be helpful.
I think there are already trees there. They've planted some.
There are. They were planted a few years ago. One or two of them have really taken off and grown great, and the rest are just very slow growers. And they do plan to put shade structures within the accessible playground.
Okay.
But what are your thoughts on a meadow versus trees or a mix in that eastern area?
Oh, over there. I like a mix. I think the trees would be good for the homeowners, like for extra privacy, possibly. But having other place a meadow, having a meadow gives you kind of more flexibility to use it for things. I think.
There's not going to be a trail through there. Is there a walking trail? That'd be nice.
Well, actually, what we were envisioning was just a mowed trail. So if it was a meadow, you just take a mower and you just have a grass trail cutting through the meadow so that you could actually experience it from within. That was Monica's idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is what we've been actually suggesting in some of the basins, the larger basins over the last 10 years. And they've done this to a tremendous success up in Washington Crossing Park now. It's absolutely gorgeous what they've done.
Let's take a look at that. Yeah. Okay, let's go next, Jim, to Community Park. So at Community Park, admittedly, the 12 Bradford pear that currently exist and the 9 red maple, I'm sorry, the 9 cherry trees, they're fine and they can stay. But Jim said long-term, what would you recommend? So this plan shows along the frontage, 12 October glory maple and 9 red maple. And then in the back, there are 2 existing sweet gum trees. And when they come down, the recommendation was to replace them with the fruitless sweet gum. And then near the pool, there's 1 thornless honey locust proposed. And then there's also 1 other swamp white oak proposed. Admittedly, we did it because of the ball fields back there and the school fields and so forth. We didn't have any other gaps that we looked at. So comments on this sheet 2.
Yeah, I'm not so upset with the cherries. I am upset with the Bradford pears, but to me, it just doesn't really make sense to cut them all down right now. But
Yeah,
I like the plan of replacing them with maples, especially, I think, cultivars with exceptional fall color. We've started to do that in other areas of the township. And I think the dramatic effect in the fall is really, really positive. I'm hoping that, in this plan, Tom, that you're developing anywhere that you can have an opportunity for a small alley of trees. Let's say it's only 5 or 6 or 7 or 10 or even 20 or so, that we take advantage of it, because those alleys in the fall, especially, with trees with exceptional color, are absolutely a delight to the eye.
I agree. And that is what's happening right now at Veterans Park with the October Glory maple along the frontage.
Yeah, and we
So-
just, I'm sure you're well aware, we just, earlier in the spring, we planted 30 sugar maples along Patterson Farm on Mirror Lake Road. And already it's just the first year, but even in the first year when they started turning, it was lovely. And in the future, I think it'll just be spectacular.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah. Very good. Okay, Jim, could you go to sheet 3?
Hey, and Tom, I just wanted to bring one other thing to everyone's attention. And this came up in my conversation again with Monica yesterday. It turns out that right near the Kids Kingdom playground, and we have a little pavilion here, we had planted some trees last year along the walking trail, to replace trees that had died. It turns out there were several more trees in this area that they just took down after our visit.
Okay.
So I'll get some information to you about what we have out there, so you could maybe come up with a recommendation to what would work well. There, Monica was thinking maybe a few evergreens to shield the properties across the street from the activity and from the lights that are further down here.
Okay. So
Yeah.
if I come up next Thursday, let's take a look at that.
Perfect.
Okay. Very good. Okay, so along, right across from the township building, there isn't a whole lot of space between the walking trail and the road, but we found on the embankment a possibility on one location to fit another tree, which is called red maple, called out as red maple. And then over closer to the sand volleyball, the plan currently shows 5 thornless honey locusts and then 12 inkberry hollies. And for the most part, other trees have been planted in recent time, but Jim and I thought that it would be good to have these additional plants in at the edge.
Yeah, the EAC had a volunteer planting at that location in 2021, I think it was, or maybe it's 2020. So that's where those trees came from.
Okay,
Yeah, and
very good.
when Tom and I had met, I had mentioned to him that I just have to verify. And actually, for the purpose of this, it's not that critical. But for planting, there is a sewer line, I believe, running close to that area. So it is kind of tight. We may not be able to get all the trees in that we had hoped in that area. But that's something I still have to. I have to pin down a few things for Tom to help him do his job by giving him some background information that he's not aware of.
Very good.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, Tom, this is actually a high visibility area on the other slide. And what I personally would love to see in there is some colorful trees like fringe tree or maybe sweet bay magnolias, maybe some hornbeam, but mostly trees that are high visibility. It's a high visibility area, and trees that are kind of have spectacular flowering and maybe full color. Again,
Okay.
fringe tree, sweet bay magnolia, serviceberry, which is kind of a tree. But just some suggestions. Also,
Okay.
we tend to be using a lot of red maples, and I love the maples. There's wonderful cultivars with great color. But I think one of the trees that's underutilized that I think is pretty spectacular is sourwood, and it tends to be one of my favorites. And it has incredible fall color, not spectacular.
Right. That's a good idea. Yeah, good point. And I'll change the 5 thornless honey locusts to I'll look at what you were saying about the Sweet Bay magnolia, the fringe tree, the sourwood.
And I would
Yeah.
like to see personally, Tom, those trees all over the township, okay? And
Yeah.
again, I think they're underutilized. But, you know, of course, the red maples are always spectacular because there's so many varieties and they're so hardy. But, you know, you just might want to keep that in the back of, you know, your mind when we finalize these plans.
Sounds good. Then if we go to sheet 4, the Fred Allen softball complex, we do have some sourwood and black gum, eastern redbuds, and October glory maples along the frontage. We have a couple of evergreen trees that are filling in the gaps of either trees that previously died or complementing existing groups of evergreen trees. And then internal to the site, Jim asked me yesterday about the 8 honey locusts near the ball fields. And I just said that I was erring on the side of having smaller leaves so that if there was fall ball going on, you know, there wouldn't be large leaves blowing into the player benches or the ball field itself. So I went light with the leaves in that location. But for the most part, I tried to follow the places that the EAC had identified on your concept plan. And in this property, Jim, on Fred Allen, I think you said there were 9 trees today. And how many trees will be in after they're all finished, like this week and next week at Fred Allen?
I think the number's somewhere around 50 of them.
50. Okay.
Yeah, so there
Okay.
were some extra trees based on some of the EAC's plans. So in talking with the landscaper, we talked about sort of mixing in with some of these other trees that are already existing here. And then the area over here, I know we had talked about maybe getting rid of this, but I know up in the northeast corner. And it turns out that the Parks Department doesn't have any objection to that. So we kind of threw like another row of trees or 2 behind what's out there existing so that it'll kind of cut down on the amount of grass that has to be cut back here.
Okay, good. Yeah, and as you pointed out earlier, the reason that we didn't plant to the downslope of where you just had your cursor is the players kind of work out in that space. Actually, right there, pre-game. So we didn't put any plants in that sloped area. Any
Well,
other?
couldn't plants be placed right along the fence line to give that some shade? I know I talked to Jim Majewski, you know, earlier this week. We had a meeting, and what we were proposing is like about 60 trees in the back there. But Jim said, you know, there were issues, you know, with that. But the trees I'm looking at now in the back, I guess they're the ones you're proposing, Tom, those little green circles.
Yeah.
Okay. We actually were thinking about lines of trees that would kind of follow the fence in kind of paramedical type groupings that go all around field 2 and 3 and can even go on the other side of field number 3. So it's just something that, you know, you might want to think about.
Okay.
Yeah, and Jim, to Tom's point that he made earlier, you know, with the fields, you got to be a little bit careful with planting too many trees near the fields because the leaves just get caught up in the fences and it kind of takes away from the purpose of the field, which is to play ball. So,
Very good. So now let's go to community center. There's not a whole lot here. And when Jim and I visited the site a couple weeks ago, we pretty much thought because of the overflow parking from the Fred Allen softball complex and the possibility of a more convenient vehicular connection, that we would leave the back 40, so to speak, open, but have a little crescent-shaped area there where we could encourage, the forest to grow into that current meadow or that lawn area. So currently, all it shows is the 5 swamp white oak in that little cusp. Has anyone from EAC thought about adding other plantings in other locations?
Not so much here. You think it's the soil's wet enough where the swamp white oaks are going in?
We could double check. We were
They
pretty
like
much,
wet.
yeah, we were pretty much viewing that from, we weren't standing right there, but when we go back next Thursday, we can double check that.
Yeah.
yeah. And Alan, back here in the woods, there are wetlands back in here.
Okay.
But we'll take a look at that.
Yeah. All right. Yeah, there are a lot of trees already planted in the front along Oxford Valley Road. So
Right.
Right.
So it might be, that site might be pretty good. Because yeah, you do need parking in the back there for the softball tournament. So
Right.
plan
Right.
to be back there.
Okay, so let's go. Reagan Tract is really very easy. It's really just a basin. And in these circa 1950, 1960 basins, Jim, what would be the correct engineering description of that tree-shaped concrete form that you see in the aerial?
They call it a low flow channel, so that
Low flow
the old
channel.
way of doing it was that you had a basin that was grass, but on the smaller rainfalls, you wanted the water to drain from the grass into this concrete channel and be shot down to the end of the basin and then discharged out. We're removing those in basins primarily. It's just they're a maintenance problem. They kind of discourage water from just infiltrating into the grass. And a basin, in a lot of ways, is supposed to be a little bit wet. So ultimately, when we do convert this basin, the low flow channels will be removed, maybe some other minor modifications done, and then the addition of shrubs and trees is a good idea.
And to that end, when we visited the site, Jim and I found one spot along the frontage where we thought a tree would fit, and only one tree because it already has plenty. And then in terms of the first step of conversion, we outlined that polygon there within which low bush blueberry could be planted. So that one was pretty easy peasy. Okay, let's go number 7, veterans.
Wait, Tom, before you go to that, you're saying that the whole interior of the basin will just be the low bush blueberry?
Yeah, I mean, we were torn about all of the basins because I remember taking a meadow management class at the Brandywine River Museum, Brandywine Conservancy years ago. And so I used my property as a experimental garden where I just stopped cutting the grass in certain areas for 2 years. And I watched what native plants and wildflowers would grow, and I removed anything invasive. And basically, I didn't have to plant anything. I didn't have to spend a penny. All I do is stop cutting the grass. So in a lot of cases, we wondered, would Public Works kind of just stop cutting the grass in certain areas for 1 or 2 years, see what emerges as a meadow, and then supplement it? Because otherwise, in some of the other basin plantings plans that we did, and we're not going to put them on the screen tonight, but we had herbaceous perennial combinations of like smooth blue aster, black-eyed Susan, and butterfly milkweed in some of the basins. And then in other basins, we used coreopsis, coneflower, and lupine, to get a nice color combination. So we could, in the basins, try to do that herbaceous perennial combination, or in some of them, just use low growth fragrant sumac, low bush blueberry, high bush blueberry, in some cases, amelanchier, and so forth. So what does EAC feel is a best practice in converting the lawn areas to these basins? What is your preference on the plant palette?
Well, Tom, this is a very controversial subject in Lower Makefield Township. In 2010, the EAC sponsored a basin naturalization program. And that was done for about 8 years, 9 years. And then about 4 or 5 years ago, it stopped. And we're not exactly sure as to why it actually stopped. However, during that period of time, we had different directors of public works, about 3 different individuals. So we're not exactly sure what happened. But when the program was at its height, we have roughly about 110 basins in Lower Makefield Township and about 50 open space areas. When the program was really working effectively, over 110 combination basins and open space in areas were naturalized, and Lower Makefield was saving about $60,000 a year. So again, we stopped doing that. There's still some of the basins that are, naturalized, but basically what we did, Tom, is that we cut the fringe, so much almost like framing a photo, if you will. So it looked like it was done intentionally. Almost looks like a picture being framed, if you will. So my personal viewpoint is I don't know why we never ever stopped that in the first place, because a lot of native plants were coming up, and some invasives too, but not a lot of them. But in this specific basin here, on all of them, I would like to see some trees actually put in there, because the absorption rate of these trees is, 10 times more any of the, the bushes or anything like that.
Yeah, maybe you could scatter a few out in the open areas away from the blueberries.
Okay. Okay, let's do that. Sounds good. All right, very good. So Jim, go to Veterans Square. Okay, on Veterans Square, because one edge, left side of the image, has utility constraints, and there are already plants that are along the frontage and dedicated use of some of the open areas. Jim and I visualized that in the area where the green dots are, red and October glory maple, and then groups of amelanchier shrubs, just to encourage the expansion of the existing hedgerow. And that was all we thought at this time for Veterans Square. So your thoughts on Veterans Square?
I think it's pretty well covered with these trees. I mean, there's already a lot of trees there. And we have it's 5 till 5, so we gotta move fast here.
Okay. All right, Jim, go to number 8. Number 8 is easy peasy. There's a master plan emerging, so we didn't really drill down in the center portion of the site, but around the perimeter to buffer the neighbors, we have white spruce and eastern red cedar, and we just have 3 sugar maples otherwise, all of which are contingent on the master plan, which, Jim, if all goes well, when is the master plan going to be completed?
They have a steering committee meeting, I believe, next week. And after that, they'll be moving forward. I did forward this sheet of the plan on to Monica Tierney so she could forward it to the consultant. Monica also mentioned to me, this is a very productive conversation with her. We just found out that a bunch of the trees along River Road are ash trees, and we are planning to remove them. Okay. So I think you can take on your plan and come up with what you think might work all along the road, since we're going to be taking down probably half these trees sometime in the next year. Okay,
very good. Okay, go number 10, Stoddard Fields. Stoddard Fields, just a simple edge. We have white spruce and October glory maple, willow oak on one side, and then 3 red maple in the triangular shape that was formed when the road was realigned. And the spruce trees were thought to be an important complement to, in addition to everything else, screen the view of the lighting, the future lighting that's going to be happening at the ball fields. Otherwise, it was just to fill in some of the gaps where there are missing trees. So any thoughts on Stoddard?
I thought some trees were being planted there this week along Oxford Valley Road. Is that not true, Jim?
Yeah, we're planting the stuff that's shown on here.
So this would work with that. All right.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay. Okay, so then number 11, Patterson, a real simple edge condition to expand the existing buffer area with low growth sumac. And then, Jim, I forgot, I think I skipped one over at Makefield Highlands Golf Course. Jim and I are going to meet next Thursday with the golf course manager, at which time we're going to ask him to mark up the plan. So far, we just put in eastern redbud along the frontage, a little pocket of sugar maple to complement existing trees in the mid area. And then around the maintenance section, we put in some chestnut oak and some white spruce just to serve as a buffer. But we'll have more to talk about for that next time. So
in our conversation with the golf course manager, he indicated that in the interior, he has many, many locations that he would like to see trees planted. So
yeah, and that's where we're going to meet with him. Yeah. So okay. Any other overarching comments?
Yeah, I have a couple, Tom. When you go back to Memorial Park, I know that there's a master plan being worked on there. But one of the things that we suggested is all along that open pathway that people walk all the time, that could accommodate maybe roughly even 100 trees or more. The other thing is the 2016 plan envisioned about 1,000 trees. And we were thinking that the new plan, the 2023 plan, will end up with approximately the same number of trees as well. I know you're not finished yet, but one of the things that I'm having trouble with looking at these schematics is that I think it would be really helpful if we had a diagram showing the 162 trees that are going in now, and then maybe in a different color or somehow coded the new trees in the master plan when you finalize that.
Okay. And tell me the numbers again. In 2016, what was the number of trees?
There was
2,000?
about 980, I think, somewhere around there, roughly 1,000.
1,000. Okay.
Our thinking was that the new plan would roughly have about, a comparable number.
Okay. Very good. All righty. Let me go ahead.
I have one comment on Patterson Farm. They're undergoing a master plan, so any planting ideas should be coordinated with that.
Good point. Yeah. Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons Jim and I just had a very light touch on that
Okay.
one. Yeah, but good point. Let me double check before I sign off. Yeah, so the 14th is good, so I can re-Zoom with you all at 6 o'clock on December 14th.
Is there any way you could send us something beforehand so we had a head start so we can get through this a little quicker?
Oh, sure. And yeah, Jim has them all.
Okay, because that would
And
help.
I'm just checking to make sure there's not utility conflicts, stuff like that.
All right.
Want to go over it with our public works director on some of the basin ones and Monica on some of the parks. And like I said, just yesterday talking to Monica, we constantly have trees dying or being taken down. So it's good to put some new ones up.
Yeah.
Tom, I have one other comment as well. I'd just like to reiterate what Alan was talking about. We need some kind of schematics and diagrams that we can take a look at and know what's going in now and what the master plan in 2023 is calling for. The other thing is, I noticed when we were going through this, I didn't hear you mention a couple of trees that I think you might want to take a look at, such as river birch, beech, tulip tree, and basswood. These are all exceptionally, beautiful trees in their own right. So it's just something you might want to take a look at. Overall, I'm very impressed with the work that I see you've done here, Tom. And the main reason is, I think, you're letting the environment speak to you, not just putting a tree there because, there's an open space.
Right. No, thank you. My pleasure. And I appreciate all your input, and we'll tweak the plans based on that input.
Okay.
Very good.
Well, thanks
I
for
just
coming.
had two more things. Tom and I had also talked about, at the request of one of the board of supervisors, trying to maybe find an area where we can maybe plant some very small trees to create a nursery of our own, sort of, to take very small saplings, and when they grow up a little bit bigger, to then take them and transplant them. And I think Tom and I are still trying to figure out a good location for something like that. And the other item is that, we're showing trees, we're not really showing sizes necessarily. So we could put 2-inch caliper trees in a lot of these areas. We could put smaller 1-inch caliper, or we could even put smaller ones in and have volunteer plantings. So ultimately, what the final product is won't preclude us from doing volunteer plantings in the future.
Okay.
No, I still think from a healthy viewpoint that the 2 to 3 inch caliper trees are best.
And Tom, look at number 5 on our October 5th recommendation letter. I won't go into it now, but see if that's the alley of trees on Heacock Road.
Okay.
Yeah, look at that one. All right. Well,
Okay.
thanks for coming. We probably
Okay.
have like 10 minutes here. We can.
Okay. Sorry for taking that time.
Well, no, this is time well spent.
Very good. All
Good
right.
stuff.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All right.
See you later. Okay.
See you
Bye.
later.
Bye. Bye.
All right. let's go through the rest real quick. The arborist for LMT, Jim and I talked to the township manager and public works guy, and they don't want to hire anybody. But Jim, I found a course at Penn State Extension. It's a webinar. It's 10 days. And I'm going to send you the link and you look at it and see whether you think that's a good idea. And if you do, I'll send it on to our town manager, David.
All right, yeah, that's a good idea, Alan. And we should mention that there were 5 people at the meeting.
Yeah.
Alan, myself, Derek Fuller, Jim Majewski, and Dave Kratzer. And all of them agreed that the arborist position would be incredibly beneficial in Lower Makefield Township. They also, to a person, admitted that they don't have the number of people in public works to adequately take care of, our trees. So Dave is going to be looking at some other possible areas of funding because he stated that Lower Makefield is capped now as far as taxation is concerned. Now we just can't get more money. So anyway, we're going to look into that with him.
Well, these classes are only $250, so that's not bad. All right, recycling. We collect a lot of styrofoam. I filled up the 15-foot U-Haul truck and had to come back for another load. There was so much. And that, I guess we could have used another person or two, but the problem was Lions Club had their craft fair moved to that Saturday, so some of them didn't show up. But now, do we want to do one in January?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, Gene. All right, so I'm thinking either January 6th, and I'm not sure if that's good with me yet. I got to talk to my brother, and or the next weekend's not good for me, but the 20th is good. So does anybody have serious problems if it ends up being the 20th?
No, I think you want to get away from the first of the year, Alan. So I think the 20th is good. And people will still have their styrofoam crap from the holidays.
And that's probably the low point of the winter. So we'll get the coldest temperatures. So that'll be good.
Yeah.
So, okay, tentatively it's the 20th. I'll start making calls, make sure the building's available and all that. What else we got? The recycling events this Saturday, electronic recycling. If you got anything, bring it over to the pool parking lot. Land use, nothing really new there, except they're going to sell 50 acres of farm across I-295 from the Torbert farm is the Breezyvale farm, and 50 acres of that is for sale. So that's something to look forward to. And you wanted nominations for the Environmental Stewardship Award?
Yeah, I talked to Gene, and we do have a possible, nomination, and that's the master gardeners who are actually taking care of the native plant display up in the administration building. But I want to look into that a little more. I also have one other pathway that I want to explore, and I will have at the December meeting a nomination one way or the other for the group to decide if that's the way to go.
Okay, still time. Yeah, I couldn't think of any group, so I'm of no help. All right, number 7, the EAC newsletter. I guess neither Matt nor Paul are here. And if we had one December, other than to tell people about the recycling event in January, I don't know if there's anything else to put in it, but I don't know. Actually, we could maybe have it in January, the beginning of January, and throw some things in it. Maybe something about the tree plan and all that. All right. Audubon Birdtown program reactivation.
Yeah, I can just speak briefly about that. In the meeting that we had on Wednesday, we asked Dave if it's not a big deal, just we need a new resolution because there's new leadership. And Dave thought that was pretty much a no-brainer. that he's going to talk to Dan Grenier about it, and he doesn't see any reason why the board would not sign the new resolution. We are still currently a bird town, but this just makes it, I guess, a little more legal.
Right. And we would help this group from time to time.
Yeah, the way it actually worked before is that the chairperson would come to our meetings and we would discuss some of the projects, that sort of thing.
All right. And now odds and ends, Sumya, anything new?
Just a couple of things. I think Dan wanted to look at that those options for the township in terms of different tree planting programs. Well, he's not here, so we can look at it next time. We don't have the time. And the other thing is that a couple of weekends back, I attended a very good lecture on edible medicinal native plants. So there was this guy who gave an excellent presentation on how he identified such species in different naturalized areas. He also has a nursery somewhere in New Jersey. So I was wondering whether he's a good candidate. I think he's a good candidate to have a lecture, sponsor a lecture on behalf of the EAC.
All right. Well, what's that
So
involve, Jim? You've done that a lot. We would have to reserve the building.
No, let me find out from him how he goes about. I mean, whether he's interested and how he goes about it.
Okay.
And then and then after that, potential, dates, which can be done over email, and then I can contact Katie and reserve the room.
Yeah, if you can have it in the colder months, it's better.
Better, yeah.
We found out last summer.
Yeah.
People tend to come. Yeah, and the township webpage they're redoing it, and it's a bit confusing, I tell you. It's kind of all over the place, but I guess we'll wait for that to settle out before we get into ours. All right, Kevin, anything new on Patterson Farm? Kevin, talk to us.
Yes, sorry, I had you on mute. Yeah, so they are moving forward. It looks like they're planning to do work on phase 1. I'll get more details later today and provide a report to the board or to the committee.
Okay. So they're about done, aren't they?
They're done with the initial master plan and reports. Now it's just figuring out what to do next in terms of what do they implement now, what do they implement later, that sort of thing.
All right, so this could go on for another half year, probably.
Probably. Well, they have probably the planning phase. Not so much. It's more they came up with a plan and different short-term and long-term ideas to implement. So it's just the whole implementation will take years probably.
Okay. All right, open discussion or sustainability at LMT events. Did you want to keep pursuing that or not, Kevin? That you contacted Monica and she never got back to you.
Yeah, I'll follow back with her. She said she was going to bring it up and I didn't hear back. So I don't know if they're taking any suggestions or tabling it or what. So I'll circle back with her. And
yeah, there's nothing coming up for a while, I don't think.
Okay, yeah.
But maybe they should make sure they recycle at the running events. You have all those plastic water bottles.
Yeah.
And I think some of those end up in the trash. All right. Anything else? Open discussion. That it? Okay, it's 10 after. Do you have anything else, Jim? Done?
No, I'll talk to you probably tomorrow. There's something I wanted to discuss about that meeting we were at on Wednesday.
Mm-hmm.
Whether in fact that we should maybe prepare some notes and send them, but I can get into particulars of that sometime tomorrow or Saturday.
We talked about open space also. We showed township manager some sites that we had been recommending. And we may want to push that open space ballot referendum again, because I think the board would probably be a little more receptive now to it.
Yeah, I think, and what we tried to tell Dave Kratzer is that, hey, Dave, this is a no-brainer. The taxpayers have the last say. If they want to do it, they do it. If they don't, they don't. If they vote for it, then they pay for it. So, and it doesn't cost the township anything.
Their choice. Yep. So, those were discussed too. So, are we ready to adjourn?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. All right. So I guess we meet again on December 14th. I'm gonna send an email to Linda and ask her if she could watch the video of this meeting, because she probably will have some ideas on the trees.
Yeah, well, again, before we get off, the conversation and the schematics we saw tonight were confusing to me. What I have to be able to see, and I think everybody would probably be in agreement, is firstly, what we have now, and then with the 162 trees, and then what Tom is proposing. To me,
Yeah.
everything was kind of mixed up, and I couldn't really, understand.
Yeah. And then Memorial Park, he had trees along Woodside being planted, and I thought those were being planted now as part of this.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I'm saying, Alan.
Yeah.
I was confused as to what is going in now and what's going to come in the 2023 plan.
Mhm. So yeah, hopefully they'll send us the material beforehand. How much money do you make on the yard sale, Kevin?
Not that much, but thank you for helping.
Yeah, better than nothing.
It's more
All
about
right.
getting rid of stuff.
Well, if we go with the 20th, I'll let you know in the next week, or what day it's the 6th or the 20th. But I'll let you know in the next week. All right, great seeing everybody again, and see you later.
All right, and
Bye.
quick
Okay.
question before you get off, Alan.